or else you won't find it when you go back. So, good morning. We hope you've rested well, because today is going to be an intense day. My doggy is here with me because we need to give a voice to those who don't have a voice. We'll begin with a meditation with Satish, and after this meditation, we will have Joan Boades. I must say that Joan Boades was born in Inca, but he, like I, but he has since gone off to Catalonia because they need a bit of help over there. So let's begin with Satish Kumar.
Please bring your both palms together and put your both feet on the floor. And bow to the sacred earth, sacred universe, sacred life. And in gratitude for this beautiful day and all the gifts we are receiving, including this wonderful gift of this annual gathering for great vision, great values, and great ideals. Then put your both palms on your knees, and make a circle with the index finger and the thumb. This circle, mandala, represents the cycle of time and the cycle of life, and also symbolizes the sun, the moon, the earth, and ourselves. And we are all related. We are all connected, as the thumb is connected with the index finger. With that sense of unity of all life, we have the short session of meditation on our breath. Relax your body. Shoulders are relaxed. Arms are relaxed. Legs are relaxed. The front and the back of the body relaxed. The face is relaxed. And bring your attention to your breath. And when you breathe in, quietly say, I am breathing in. And when you are breathing out, we quietly say, I am breathing out. So we are breathing in and breathing out mindfully and heartfully. Feel the breath. And fill the chest with your breath. And breathing in, smile. Breathing out, relax, and let go. And feel you are at home, you are here, you are full, you are complete, and you are contented. And breathe in and breathe out, being aware of each step of your breath. Breathe in, smile. Breathe out, relax. Let go. Let go of all worries, all thoughts, all plans, and just be here and now, in the here and now. This moment, beautiful moment, precious moment, and this breath, precious breath. Each breath is breath of life, breath of peace, breath of smile, breath of love. And be aware that all of us are breathing the same air, the same breath of life. Thus we are all related. We are all connected through our breath. As the thumb is connected with the index finger. With that sense of unity of all life, breathe mindfully and heartfully. Smile, relax, let go. And be aware that the whole of humanity is sustained by the same breath of life which we breathe. Thus, we are all united, all related, all connected. As a thumb is connected with the index finger. With that sense of unity of all life, we breathe mindfully and heartfully, being aware of each step of our breath. And be aware that all living beings upon this earth, humans and other than humans, plants, birds, animals, all life is sustained by the same breath which we breathe. Thus, we are all related. We are all connected. As the thumb is connected with the index finger. With that sense of unity of all life, we breathe mindfully and smile and let go. The mantra Om is the mantra of wholeness, relatedness, and connectedness, of totality. So let us sing the mantra 3 times together. Breathe in. And just in your consciousness, say to yourself, I am my body, I am my breath, I am spirit, I am consciousness, I am compassion, I am truth, I am love, I am. Thank you.
Se me había olvidado antes dar la bienvenida a Alberto Martí, que ayer no estaba con nosotros, y a
Yesterday, I forgot to welcome Dr. Alberto Martí Bosch and his wife, Joanna, who is sitting next to you, Satish. That's right. He's an amazing doctor who's helping lots of people with cancer and many, many other illnesses. Amazing doctor. He used to treat children with cancer, and from that, he decided to lower the suffering of people by helping them to heal and support conventional healing with alternative therapies. So, on to what Guillem is saying. We're going to talk about the Tree of Life, and the title of this song is Jerusalem.
Bon dia, benvinguts, benvingudes.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. After Satish, our resident wise man, with this wonderful meditation, I have to come in with information that is kind of a panic mode, and I'm sure that Satish will understand me because we're always talking about this deep connection and unity that is between everything in our planet. So thank you in advance, Satish, for being understanding with the information that I'm about to give. This climate crisis, which we will not see how it's going to end. It's a film that has begun. It's a very real film. Our students, our children, and their children will surely see further than us, and we hope it's a happy future. There's a message from Greta Thunberg for all of us. This is an emergency.
Molt bé, aquest és un resum de la idea de la Greta, que és una noia, una nena, que l'any passat...
So this is Greta's idea, a girl who last year when we gathered here, we didn't know her yet, because that was when she began her sit-out in August 2018, and now she's known around the world because she and all of that generation, our students and their children, are already asking themselves whether they may be the last human generation that is able to live on this planet. 12,000 years ago, in the case of Sapiens sapiens, will we exist in another 12,000 years? Let's listen to science, as she says. Let's watch What have we seen recently? We have seen people who dare, against science, to carry out barbarities. Mr. Trump, for example, this magazine does not exist. It's just a parody, but it just goes to show the kind of ridiculous things that you hear people say. What do you do every day to fight climate change? I like nature, I like the countryside, and I am concerned about conservation. Climate change is something that's natural. It's something I don't really know about, actually. This is a politician. This is a topic that has to do with control and in which we are actually playing with people's lives, with them and their children. That politician we just heard is an extreme right politician here in Spain. And basically, governments are acting so slowly that we really don't see any action anywhere. And it's not just the extreme right that is anti-scientific who are saying these things, but also other parts of government are just doing nothing. And this, all it does is to worsen the problem. And we need to speak about the truth. We need to tell the truth. Rebellion Extinction is asking for that, for example. What is the truth? We know that there's climate change in history ever since humanity began. But what is happening nowadays is that for the first time, it has to do with industrialization and human activity. Apologies, the technology is failing for a moment. Okay, now it works. I was saying that climate crisis and climate change have appeared naturally over the last million years. The Earth is a lot older than we are, and we're acting on climate parameters, however, nowadays that have never been seen before. So there have been glacial moments and warmer moments, and the margin of temperature change has been between 4 and 7 degrees. If we think of one of the most important greenhouse gas emissions, which is CO2, over the last 800,000 years, the fluctuation margin has been between 180 and 330 parts per million in the atmosphere. And over the last 100,000 years, this had only gone up by 80 ppms. Over the last 5,000 years, however, the temperatures since the 18th century have risen by 1.2 degrees, which is the warmest in the last 12,000 years since Homo sapiens appeared. So we are actually driving a Formula One car, not a bicycle. Every year we are burning the work that has been carried out by photosynthesis over 400 years. The industrial species is burning 400 years of photosynthesis per year. So we're overspending by 399 years. We're also being told that there are 415 ppms of CO2 in the atmosphere, which is the highest there has ever been in human history. the Paris Treaty, which is a voluntary agreement and relies on every state applying these plans voluntarily, we would still not manage to keep temperature below that barrier that is considered critical. The problem is that the commitment of all the countries right now, even if they were to comply it, temperature would rise by the end of the century by 3.8 degrees. And this is worsened by the fact that if we continue at present rhythms, we would actually be 6 degrees above by the end of the century. Let's remember that 1.2 degrees is what has gone up over the last century, and that 4.7 degrees is the maximum that has happened before. So this is what science says. So what is the scientific standing on this? Well, for example, London now has a temperature in summer that is similar to Barcelona. This will be a progressive evolution in most of the cities in the north and the center of Europe, which means that they're becoming more Mediterranean, and our climate is becoming more like the Sahara's climate. So this is a general phenomenon around the world. We see here temperatures, for example, in Slovenia, that could have an equatorial temperature by the middle of the century. Look at San Francisco, etc. All of those key indicators, all of those key places where the biggest bets are placed regarding the climate are on red alert. So the melting of the Antarctic. Remember that a huge block of ice fell last week, which is the size of the island of Menorca. The melting of permafrost and the tundra is also a huge problem because it seals methane gas that is even more lethal than CO2. And so if that is released, because it's held in the soil by the permafrost, if that is released, that will accelerate the vehicle, the Formula One, that climate destruction could involve. This is also happening with the Great Barrier Reef, which is the largest marine reserve we have in the world. It's practically fried as if it were in a microwave oven. And I have not added a photograph of the fires in the Amazon right now because I didn't want to seem demagogical, but basically what is being burnt down in the Amazon and in other countries right now is a really precarious situation with international delinquents like Bolsonaro who are favoring its intensive destruction. Even worse things are happening. I don't know if you know, but if you follow Antena 3 Spanish TV information and all of those media mechanisms that manipulate public opinion, we would never see that Jakarta now only has 10 million inhabitants because people are moving because they're in a really serious situation, because the sea level is ascending. Look at the Time magazine, which published this number a few days ago, with the ex-Prime Minister of Portugal and General Secretary of the UN, that is basically saying we are flooding now. Many of the people who live on coastal areas run the risk of no longer being able to live where they live. If we talk about water, we need to talk about stress, aquatic stress. There's a severe water shortage around the world, and in 12 of the 17 most threatened countries are in Oriental countries, in African countries, Tunisia, for example. So countries like India. As we said yesterday, India and China host a large part of humanity, 1,300 or 1.3 billion people, with a level of water stress that is huge. So these are highly populated areas that are under huge threat of flooding and lack of water, drinking water. So let's remember that climate crisis can cause migrations of hundreds of millions of people in the short term. Basically, women and children, and there are 51 countries in crisis situation, and more even by drought and lack of water. We will need to reduce gases by 45% immediately in order for this to try to stabilize. So there really isn't much time to waste. As Greta was saying, we're talking about 11, 12 years maybe. What will happen otherwise is that these boats that come to our coasts with migrants in them, to all these Mediterranean countries coming from the north of Africa, they will just become more and more. So we will remember these days as an anecdote compared to what will come if we don't face up to this emergency. We need to remember that this is not a problem created by humanity, but it has been created by very few people. For example, only 90 companies have caused 2/3 of global emissions from the beginning of the industrialized era, which is basically 1,000 from the middle of the 18th century. They have caused 2/3 of the problem. If we talk about wealth, the 10% richest people in the world are responsible for 50% of emissions. That means that the per capita emissions of a person in Algeria is not at all comparable to the emissions of someone living here in Palma or in Pollensa or in New York. So really, it's the richest part of the planet when it comes to countries and also large companies. Those are the ones most responsible. What about here in the Mediterranean? What could happen here? There are three variables we need to control. We live in the Mediterranean, and so the temperatures are the first variable. What reports are talking about is this. Climate change reports from the Generalitat in Catalonia say that by the end of the century, we could have reached 5.4 degrees in rising in the Mediterranean area of the Spanish state. And this increase in temperatures would not be uniform over the years, but that over the summer, for example, it could rise. If you think of the empty Spain, the central area of Spain that we talk about now, temperatures could rise 7 degrees more in the summer. So they will increase in general and be more extreme in the summer. This needs to worry us. Second variable is rain, the availability of water. What we know, thanks to studies from the European Union and researchers, is that this is the traditional middle scenario, that emissions will continue as up to now. They will neither rise nor fall, which is the most likely thing to happen at present. This tells us, if that happens, is that the red area, the intense red area, which is Maghreb, Sicily, the west of Spain, that means us, Turkey. By the end of the 21st century, every 2 years, there will be a very dry one with a high risk of forest fires. And in places close to us, the availability of water will be complicated, especially in the summer. There'll be a lot less water in summer. In the winter, it will be more normal, but in the summer, there'll be a lot less water, and the tourists' needs will actually worsen the situation. So the numbers just don't add up. Here, there are these records, which, for example, here shows that there is the most number of swimming pools per person, the highest proportion of pools per person in Europe in this area. The third variable is the sea level. The Rockefeller Foundation maintains this server that provides information of what will happen in Mallorca as temperatures rise. And between 1.5 degrees and 4 degrees, 1.5 degrees is considered the healthy barrier. 4 degrees is the more likely one. At the beginning, the differences wouldn't be that noticeable, but as time goes on, look at what will happen. Look at what will be flooded here in Mallorca. So this will be affecting citizens, anyone who's managing public resources, people in schools, all of us. Now, who's producing this greenhouse gas effect? Greenhouse effect. Well, 8% of all emissions in the Mediterranean, which is one of the most affected areas in the world by climate change, derive from tourism. And I say tourism because 8% is direct, and tourism plays an important role in aviation. So any increase in flights is actually a disproportionate increase in emissions. Right now, these emissions are only calculated when the planes are on land, so taking off and landing. But if it was actually calculated when they are up in the air, we would see huge figures and we would consider air flying as terrorism. Scientists and organizations that can hardly be considered radical, like the UN, are actually giving these informations and this data. Here it tells us that we would need 15 planets to maintain the life that we have here, especially in the peak moments of consumption, which is when tourists are here. In order to sustain the food and energy requirements, we would need 15 planets, which means this is completely unsustainable. We need to lower this climate bill, climate footprint, because every tourist arrives here with 45 liters of gasoline, or the equivalent. This is a road map and a train map from the Scanner's Guide from 1933 in Mallorca. Look at the train lines. You could go to Felanitx, Santanyí. You could go around the whole island by train in 1933. What is going on now? 10 years ago, exactly, the central government with Zapatero pledged 400 million to take the train to Alcudia and Arta. And this was planned for 2009. All of this amazing promise has become this. We understand that all of these governments are saying that we have a climate crisis, but our governments are just not up to the task of this panic mode. So they're talking a lot, they're in a relaxed mode, which Satish, as he says, it is important in order to not lose sight of the interconnection of everything, that the world is under the control of business and economic interests that do not consider all of these side effects. And when all of this takes us to media manipulation as well. This is from this summer, saying here are these boats of people trying to get here from Africa amongst the yachts. It was almost like saying, watch out, the Moors are coming. And the attitude in the press. So he's talking about a local tax that is paid, an eco tax that some people say is being dedicated to building roads instead of carrying out ecological projects as it should be. People, so this future is something that is exponential. So what lies ahead? We know the truth. What we must do is to act. This is the first photo of the first concentration of young people in Barcelona, and you don't need to be an ecologist to want a future and to want a future for everyone. So how can we act? This is a tweet from a school in Barcelona that says, climate disaster, fascism in Europe, the Mediterranean is burying people under its waves. Will all of this be talked about in class? It affects us all. Every morning we go to work so that the government says that we're doing everything we must to promote education in the Balearics. But are we really teaching what needs to be taught? This climate crisis is really not talked about enough from school to university. The time that is dedicated in France to talk about this, about these global challenges in France, is already defined as being insufficient. And a climate expert says, when I think that 700,000 young people get to high school without understanding the climate crisis and how to face it, this leads me to a very deep sense of frustration and failure. I think we need to learn from this reflection and realize that our schools do not talk about this. It's very sad. It's unethical that professionals of our capacity and motivation and vocation are not able to prioritize the interests of what young people should be learning, because these young people, they must know that it's not possible, that they may not have a future. So it really needs to become central in the school so that deep changes can happen. It's about teaching for the future, teaching the truth. More things that the school can do, obviously, is to talk about the food issue. We need school canteens, which are a key part of education and a key part of life, is something that has traditionally been left aside from the curriculum and the teaching methodology, but it needs to be a central element because it's such an important factor, as Gustavo was saying yesterday, because food and food production has a huge weight on climate crisis. So we need to be bringing food into the classroom. We need to be discussing food issues. We need to introduce the canteen into school life. We need to be introducing environmentally safe foods into school canteens. And how can we do this? There are many ways. There's this website of organic school canteens in Catalonia where people are being absolutely heroic in introducing this. Here we have like vegan and vegetarian diets in northern European schools that are kilometer zero products. We can do this. We can connect and try to promote all of this and get inspired. The eco-literacy, the Center for Eco-Literacy, for example, is a center that is giving a lot of materials and tools for our food and diet to become a topic to be studied and something that can be enjoyed as well as used to protect the climate. So other companies involved, for example, Repsol has created a foundation called Energy with a Conscience, and they're really champions on this. Whereas it's at the same time, one of the companies that is most polluting at European level. So all these companies are doing greenwashing. Schools, for example, in the north of Europe are doing things like insulating their schools and doing all sorts of bioconstruction things. And so this is also a way of children learning by using solar energy and lowering the carbon footprint of the school. This is also a very educational thing. We're privileged to have very interesting partners in Germany and in Britain. We also need to design resilient communities that go beyond the school. And in Palma, this is something I've been trying to say for years, we have huge holes in education. The school population has increased by 3 over the last 70 years. And this dark region here, which is social inequality here and in the rest of the world, or climate change with the lack of democracy, is something that means we need to create human communities, starting from the school and the neighborhood, taking into account global factors and resiliency. If we can face climate change impact and the social effects of it in an urgent way, then it must be through designing a community that the school is embedded into. And I invite you to visit this page, the Center for Ecoliteracy in California. The idea is that the school should be where democracy is applied. Families, neighborhoods, councils need to connect with the local schools as well to share good practices and empower people and empower the schools so that they can choose their own curriculum and they can, for example, reforest the school, that they can become partners with southern schools so that the schools can be designing projects that can help them learn and connect with other people in other countries, which is something that all of this I include in the book that I presented these days, is to do projects in the schools. For example, getting the kids to design diets to improve diets that have less of an impact or footprint on the planet. And radical democracy is something that needs to be applied in schools so that our students can become citizens of the world who are aware of today's challenges. Let's listen to some testimonies from some of these people. Here we have a very brief piece of this film, Human. It's okay, we can't hear it, so we'll leave it for now. I say this because I'm at a high school in Gracia. So basically, he's talking about the name of the school and the cultural implications that has. And I'm very proud of participating in the process of naming this school after a very important female Catalan writer. So we have developed this project, which is called Planet Pamias, and as the film Human did, we are collecting photos of all the people who are at the high school because the students are a lot more diverse than the teachers. The teachers are all white, but the students are very different. And so we are building stories of life and migration so we can get to know each other and get to know who is in our community. And from that point on, to design alternatives that connect from the school with these alternatives. We have people from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Morocco, Latin American countries that are very impoverished countries as well. And this is the premise. Tell me and I will forget. Teach me and I learn. Teach me and I'll remember. Get me to do it and I will learn it. This is by Benjamin Franklin. Like the kid was saying yesterday, we were asked to do these signs for the demonstration, but we weren't allowed to go to the demonstration. So we need to be coherent with our students as well. So world leaders, and finishing this presentation, I want to talk about something that Naomi Klein spoke about, which is something that activists know. And she has theorized a lot about a different kind of globalization that could protect the climate. And here are some books of hers that I recommend to you. The Shock Doctrine, how capitalism, disaster capitalism, which she calls, has become hegemonic, which I agree with. This one is about climate change, which changes everything. Capitalism against climate. It's really worth reading because teachers, we need to train ourselves constantly. We tell the teachers, the students, but it's difficult for us ourselves to apply. No, I don't have time to read. I don't have time to write. We need to train ourselves in these important challenges for humanity. It is obligatory to do this mental recycling. What the climate needs to prevent a collapse is a contraction of the use of resources by humanity. Our economic model demands, in order to avoid collapse, is a limitless expansion. And only one of these sets of rules can be changed. The only law that cannot be changed are the laws of nature. Therefore, we need to change the laws of economy. This wild capitalism, runaway capitalism, is basically leading to living without limits. But as Satish always says, we need to change this human industrialization that is not well channeled. We need to save the planet and end capitalist extraction. The limitless industrialized system that wants to spend everything now without considering people or climate or nature, there is no way out. It will either finish with us or we need to finish with it. So here is some of those movements like Extinction Rebellion that has also reached Spain, that was born in Britain, that is powerful and wants to implement the idea of panic and that we need to act now. It cannot be progressive, it has to be immediate. What I'm saying is very important because Greta, in July 2018, in the summer 2018, she was no one. We didn't know of her. We saw her here last year. She was still unknown, and now she's an example for children around the world. There are many other kids in many, many countries who are not called Greta, but who are also mobilizing around the world. And they have managed to mobilize 4 million young people just a few weeks ago at the climate demonstration. I always recommend Eduardo Galeano, a writer that many of you will know. Let's see if technology will allow me to show it to you. As Galeano says, so as it says here, as Galeano says, if they won't let us dream, we won't let them sleep. Thanks to this, colleagues of ours who are represented here by a great writer and activist have created teachers for the future, people who are sensitive to this topic. We won't let them sleep. Schools need to go into panic mode. This is the future for Mallorca and the rest of the world, and these teachers have started to act together with these kids who are asking themselves whether this is the last generation. They have the right to live with a climate that is stable and with a stable personal project, with whichever personal project they would like to carry out. Thank you.
Bé, 5 cèntims sobre Miquel Àngel Lleuger.
Just a few words about Miguel Angel. He's a good person. He's a father, has several kids, and he knows exactly what's coming behind. He is a poet that has a great deal of prestige, and he's also a good translator. He's an English teacher. He works in a high school and a secondary school. He has a long political and social trajectory, and he is one of the promoters of this small organization that we begin to hear more about in Mallorca, in the classrooms and in the teachers' rooms. And, well, people one of the things that Mallorca is ahead of other parts of the country is that the teachers are able to come together and work together. Thank you for being here, Miquel Àngel.
10 minuts. No, aquí tens... vols un... Espera. No, vols un micro de...
Així basta?
Sí.
Sí, bueno, d'acord. 10 minuts, sí.
10 minutes. Okay, well, thank you, Guillaume, for inviting me here to be with you. Thanks to Joan for this presentation. And yes, this is an opportunity. Okay, let me just place 10 minutes here. Okay, to explain what these Teachers for the Future are, what it is, this organization. It's, I don't need to explain the program because the program and the desires what Joan has just explained. This is a group of teachers, professors from Mallorca that came into existence with the intention of joining this global rebellion of Greta Thunberg and Fridays for Future and Extinction Rebellion, and to do it from our position as teachers in the classrooms. And what we want to do is what Joan explained, to take this information to the classrooms, to get the schools to work this in their curriculum, and to make sure there's plenty of information about this, and to create a network of teachers, professors that can promote this and share experiences so that this can become a reality. Now, one thing that you may be thinking is that it's been quite some time, many years, that schools do environmental education. Yes, of course they do, and they do a good job in many cases, and the experiences are positive, and there's lots of background that we can take advantage of. But I think that in the current moment, in 2019, there are two elements, two concepts that we would like to incorporate into this goal of increasing the environmental content and promoting it, and that is the idea of emergency and of rebellion. And it's been years that rebellion and that there's been a feeling of urgency, but in these last 2 years, there's been somewhat of an important step forward. The Fridays for Future movement, with this beginning that was just not go to class once a week, with strikes at school, and as the students themselves say, they know that where they should be is in the classroom getting education, but since there isn't a response from the governments, they don't believe that they should be preparing themselves for a future that the adults are stealing from them. So Fridays, for this movement of Fridays, and there's an element of rebellion with these people from Extinction Rebellion that are the ones that blocked the center of London for a week, and now they're back, and in their name they are carrying this out. Extinction Rebellion means either there's a rebellion or there will be a disaster. So following the tradition of teachers that do environmental education, that talk about the planet and that talk about increasing knowledge in the classrooms, well, we want to make it clear that we believe that it's time to take a stand and that the governments should do so at every level, and there should be a radical change in how we're doing things. And the idea of emergency, of urgency, of panic, that is something that is inevitable. For many years we've been thinking that we've been threatened by the climate change and this biodiversity apocalypse that's approaching. And it's true that in recent years there has been an important step forward in the awareness of this emergency, as well as in the physical reality of indicators showing us how the indicators are going, where they're going, everything from the melting of glaciers and ice all over the world, as well as the loss of biodiversity and increase in temperatures. And all of this is becoming more and more worrisome. And it's indicating that border, that limit, is no longer 2 degrees, but it's 1.5 degrees. So if we're at 1.2 or 1.1 and our safety barrier is 1.5, well, it means that the situation is truly becoming dramatic. Now, with this awareness that a change needs to be made, our practice as teachers needs to be affected by it. And so we want to be a network of teachers that can share this desire of this desire to the classrooms. And as Joan explained, with this news from Le Monde, that there is a lack of presence of these topics in the classrooms. And we want to share this information and ways of bringing that information to the students. And we want to also educate, to train teachers. Maybe not do it ourselves directly because we're not experts, but we know people that are, and so the teachers can have more opportunities to know about this. And these meetings are an example of that. And we want to create this network to share ways in which we can foster this critical approach or opinion among our students. Now, we want to improve the environmental behavior of schools. This is something that we've been doing for years, but it always seems that we've been doing these ideas, that we're talking about these ideas of recycling in the classrooms, but it seems that we've been doing it for a long time, but it just doesn't seem to be working well. And I think it's time for us to take a step forward and for the schools to begin initiatives and projects in this direction to improve their school cafeterias for the meals at schools and the reduction of the use of plastics and bottles and all of those typical things that we see in school lunches. And if we create this network and we can share this, well, if we do this in one school and another, we will see results. And as a group, we can also address the public authorities. Obviously, schools can do things, but it's the administration that has to take the true steps to make the true changes. And we can have educational courses, and one of the things that we want to do is to create something that's well done and solid. And we want to talk to the educational administration, and we want our schools that have school lunchrooms or cafeterias that have diets that are friendly with the planet and that purport sustainability. That's our objective. I have 3 minutes remaining that I would like to take advantage of to explain to you what it is that we've done so far, because we've only been around for a short time. We appeared in May in the last strike of students, and we, the teachers, published a manifesto in the press supporting the students that went out to the streets to protest. And we said that the protagonism is theirs and the hope is theirs, but we have to do our part. Fridays for Future has an important component of communication between the generations, where the young ones say, look what you've done to our future, you need to give it back to us, you need to help us to recover it. And this is something that we need to mention as well. But we came into existence in May with this document that we had published in the media and in the press, and we had our first assembly where we shared our objectives, ideas, and plans, things that we could do. And of course, we would have liked to have begun planning and looking to mid and long term. And we as teachers like to plan and we like to put things on the calendar, but we immediately discovered that we had this global week of climactic action, which is from the 20th to the 27th of September. And so there was there was a strike here among a stoppage of all of the students, where in other countries it was a strike, a national strike, but here it was only the level of students. But first of all, we supported this strike, this stoppage here in Mallorca in Spain. It had very little presence as a general strike. It was just seen as a student strike, but in countries like France or England or the United States, the workers, it was a general workers' strike, not just of students. And we promoted, I mean, obviously, we suggested to strikes, but we don't want to get into areas that aren't ours. And it was called as a strike, and in the educational sector, it had a presence. It was a strike that had to give a group of educators to have the possibilities. There were 600 teachers. It's not a lot as far as percentage, but it's very valuable that 600 people that were teachers were able to join in on this strike and be with the students and to join the strike that was not prepared by us, but rather by our students. We also launched a campaign that was called Schools for the Future. Schools for the Future is a first campaign that came as an emergency for this first week of climactic activity. And we wanted to become more permanent with contents and goals. And the first session, however, was where different schools took a picture of a group of teachers with their logo, with a hashtag, with a message, anything to support our proposal or in some activity of their students. And we were surprised to discover that more than 30 schools, almost 40 schools, perhaps some of you are here, sent us a photograph of groups of teachers or activities that were done in the school. And so that's a very positive response, and it is actually filling a gap that exists, and we believe that it's a good starting point. We have people. We've had meetings with 50 people. We have a second assembly that you're all invited to in Alcover on Saturday the 26th of October, to which you are all invited, and we're also having an impact in the media. And so it's a starting point for us to do an important thing. One thing that I want to highlight, and I'm going to finish with this, about this week of global actions and mobilizations and what was done in the schools. It's true that we've been doing activity in schools for some time, but the activities carried out this week included students that were 8 years old, 10 years old, but there's a change in the approach. This one has the idea of demanding, of urgency. The manifests have been written. We have posters and banners have been made, and the message is no longer one of we need to recycle, but rather the message that has to be given is that we have to put our foot down and demand a solution. One school took 800 students to the courtyard and read the manifesto of Fridays for Futures, and there were other activities for awareness, using photographs and banners and placing an emphasis on this citizens' attitude of responding rather than what we've always done and we've continued to do, but that is no longer the only thing that has to be done. And so there was an activity that I really liked, and it was a secondary school in Palma that brought all of the students to the courtyard, and together they stood in a position to make the number 415, which is so important in all of this. That number is 250 is the pre-industrial level. 350 is the level, with a certain safety. 415 is where we are now. So that is a way of calling attention to the situation which we are in, which is urgent and an emergency. I will finish by saying, since I have been given this time to explain this, I will take advantage and give you a little ad here. We have this Twitter account where you can follow our activities, and we have a blog, a website that is schoolsforthefuture.cat. And we want to put the emphasis on this project, the growth of the network in schools. And if you want to receive our information, if you want to know more about our assembly on the 26th, if you want to join the global rebellion of teachers and students here in Mallorca, wherever you are, then you will be more than welcome with us. So thank you very much.
Bé, ara han convidat en els...
So we have invited some of the students from Fridays for Future. I believe there are 5 or 6 that are here with us. So if you can begin taking your seats, and for 20 minutes or so, they're going to talk to us about their experience. And meanwhile, we're going to listen to music from a group that has just appeared here in Mallorca. They don't even have a new disc, but a new record, but they've sent us. They're called the Crazy Recyclers, and they sent us this video that they've prepared so that we can hear it. Watch it, sorry. Because it's a video that you're going to hear the Bella Ciao song that many of you know, and we're going to sing it together with a text in Catalan that we'll put up on the screen. And after their talk, if you want to, and I'm sure you will, we'll sing that song together. And Ricard, that has brought a guitar, here he is. Okay, there he is, Ricard. He will accompany us. So we can hear it with the tune of Bella Ciao, the famous Italian song Bella Ciao.
tres? Va bien. Vale. Vos presentau primer i llavors compartiu el que vulgueu, si podeu xerrar entre vosaltres o individual.
Bé, bon dia a tots. Jo som Marta Cifra, som estudiant de biologia.
I am a student of biology. I'm Marta Cifra, and we are part of the Fridays for Future movement. And I'm here with my colleagues or my classmates to explain a little bit about how we are experiencing this movement and to give you our impression about the current situation, possible solutions for the future, what things are in our hands. And if you want to introduce yourself, good morning. I am Marina, and I study at WIB as well in the area of chemistry, biochemistry, and the same as she said. We want to convey how we're experiencing all of this. My name is Martina. I also study with them, and biochemistry is my area of study. We knew each other, but we've gotten to know each other better since Fridays for Future has been an important part of our activity, and we'd like to share with you our perspectives. So, on my part, I've been fortunate to learn in school about the importance of respecting the environment. I had teachers that they were heirs of previous movement about the overexploitation of our resources, and that looks for a more sustainable lifestyle for everyone. And that movement is really the shoots, the start of these ideals that have been promoted for many years. I feel very happy to see the movement that is taking place, that is arising all over the world. It's kind of a sweet and sour feeling, because on the one hand it's very sad the reason that we're doing it, because of this lack of safety, this uncertainty that we have for the future. But at the same time, the sweet side is that it's positive to see that so many people are waking up and realizing that our resources are not infinite. We're living in a limited space, and we all have to learn to live in a way that can last for many, many more generations, and to live well. So, with all of the problem that we found in our generation, this movement has come into existence. And here in Mallorca, it began at the university, because that's where they found that space to begin. And we are the first generation of Mallorcan Fridays, but there are many other pockets that are appearing. We are perhaps a bit old for this movement. It's more aimed at younger students, but the 15 and 16-year-olds are starting to step up, and we are beginning to see them organizing assemblies and other activities in the secondary schools in Felanitx and so many places. And so it's no longer just us at the university. As Marta was saying, this is something that is sprouting, and we're beginning to see the results. And the last mobilization it was tremendous. It went way beyond our expectations, and thanks to the Teachers for the Future that were involved as well, and that they gave us their support. Also, the Climate Alliance from here, from Mallorca, supported us. And from now on, I mean, moving forward, we have many projects. We want to foster this in secondary schools, because we believe that we should go and share the message with them, and we think they will be more open to hear it from us rather than from adults. You know, it's always someone that it's explaining to you in our educational system, but when it's people that are from your age or a very similar age and saying it from you to you, from person to person, well, we believe that it will have a greater impact. And we have lots of projects of going to these secondary schools and trying to make people aware of what's going on. And we also want to begin to be there every Friday, because we didn't have enough people to be able to stop every Friday. Because if you try and you don't see a response, well, we've been doing it little by little, but now we can start doing this on Fridays at Plaza de Cort. And just to be there, to make it clear that we don't have much time left, that we have to do something now. And I don't know if we'll have 6,000 like we did at the last one, but this is an emergency and we have to act, and we want to mobilize everyone to be involved. I wanted to comment on what Martina said, that we want to begin now to go to secondary schools and to give talks. I mean, we don't want them to be lectures or anything, but we think it's very important to do so, because what we've realized is that a lot of focus is placed on the social media and so forth to make this message known, but we know that that's not enough to get this movement to grow, because in social network it will be followed by people that are already participating or people that are already interested in this issue. We think that we need to awaken something in a group of people that have that feeling inside that there is an emergency, to make them the promoters within their own schools, and that they, as promoters, can help to extend this in their schools. And that is how we're going to be able to make it grow more and more. And that is the desire that we have now in our work with the secondary schools, and we're very excited about that. And concerning what was mentioned before by Miguel about the transformation in the classrooms, I believe that it is essential. Yes, this transformation has to take place in the classrooms, of course, but we have to transfer this and get the families involved as well. We have to get the families to participate in the same transformation, because if that isn't done, if that doesn't happen, well, I get the impression that what happens is, yes, we can bring about this educational transformation in the classroom, but when you get home and it's not being done, then this kind of quenches the transformation. It stops it from evolving. So when the family group begins to be affected, that is, not only the students are changed, because we have to help to bring about this revolution among the students, but there has to be a tremendous support on the part of parents. So this is the way in which we will make it possible to actually happen. And as a way of breaking with the individualistic perspective that capitalism has injected into our society, well, we believe it's necessary to do away with that. The bottom line with this individualism that we have introduced into our lives, we will not be able to transform society. As Jaume also said, there were 90 companies. Joan? Joan is a pretty name as well. But the there were 90 companies that had caused 2/3 of the disaster, and it's clear that if we continue to take on this responsibility for change at the individual level, it's not going to be possible. What we have to do right now, and it's urgent, is to get organized, to reestablish the balance of power. If we get organized at the level of students and teachers, together with a MIPA or each family group, and if all of the different levels of our society, including the working class, let me just clarify something. Since it seems till now that the working class wasn't included in the environmental discussion, well, no, we are part of that same repressed class that is going to be affected by the climate disaster and the ecologic disaster. So we need to get organized in order to work as one. And if it's the majority of the population that is involved in this movement, then power will no longer be in the hands of these 90 companies that have really brought about this disaster.
Alguna vol afegir algo?
Do either of you want to add anything? How are we doing on time?
2 minuts? Ui. Pues si
2 minutes. Well, if you have any questions, now's the time.
Hola, buenos días.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for being here. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. I have a question concerning the university because I have a friend that works at the university, and he was telling me that this movement at the university didn't exist. And I'm sending him a photograph, and I just said, "Hey, the Fridays for Future began at the university." I know with is there movement? I know there's a movement in the School of Law, also in the School of Economics, or the social sciences, economics for the issues of immigrants, because it's fine to go and explain things in the schools, in the secondary schools, but it's important for all of the university get involved as well. I studied law, and there's very little activism at the School of Law, and it's very important for there to be activism there as well as in other schools at the university. So what's your take on how things are at the university?
Yo misma. Actualmente en el grupo.
Currently, our group is quite interdisciplinary. We have people studying different degrees. As a matter of fact, I think we're the only ones from the science side. But from law school, I don't think there's anyone from the law school of the university. We are fortunate, as far as the professors are concerned, that we have an interdisciplinary group for research into climate change there, and we are pressuring so that they can also see the results. But our group is really just coming into existence, where we're really taking shape now. And one of the challenges that we have before us is to be capable of taking advantage of the wealth of knowledge that each one has, that we have from our different degrees, so that we can complement each other and make this movement one that's much more holistic and complete. And that involves a transformation of our society for the people and by the people. And we don't have people from law school, but we do have from tourism, from history of art. So just to give you examples that aren't really from the side of science or law, but even though they're very distinct or different schools, degrees, well, it's important to everyone. So.
Gràcies.
Thank you.
No mos mogueu d'aquí. Bé, ara passarem un vídeo.
Now we're going to see this video, a 3-minute video, while Ricard prepares for us to sing together. And Gustavo Duque has told me that he has a poem that is dedicated to Fridays for Future, and he's going to now tell it to us. In the primary school of the Land of Winds, the boys and girl winds, they were explained possible jobs for the future. The one that was most popular in the school of the country in the Land of Winds is not the job of pushing boats or being wind for the windmills, or even the passionate role of creating the waves on the sea. The preferred profession for these wind children is to enter and leave the throats of people. They want to be voices. Sorry, that was a poem. It's kind of hard to do.
Tothom que pugui, considerant la diversitat funcional,
everyone that considers that believes in functional diversity should stand up.
nostra terra té un problema, d'ajudar-la per salvar-la, fem una construir millor futur, comencem ara mateix. Fem-ho més verd, fem-ho més net, fem-ho més ràpid i esperit, fem-ho from the d'adoptar, d'aturar les mentides i canvis demostrat hem de construir millor futur. Comencem ara mateix, resetar-nos i espavilar-nos, reconstruir els nostres ulls demonitzats. Hem de construir millor futur. Comencem ara mateix. Cada terra era un problema. D'ajudar-la per salvar-la i fem-ho trasllat. Hem de construir millor futur. Comencem ara mateix. Millor futur. Comencem ara mateix. De construir millor futur. Comencem ara mateix.
Vale. Bé, ara...
Okay, next. I think I said it yesterday. He's not a psychologist, but he is a clandestine philosopher. Well, I have an anecdote because the first time they talked to me about him, I said, nah, psychologists, nah, I'd rather not. I'd rather not. But then I read an interview with him, and I saw an interview on video, and I said, oh, he's not a psychologist. And apart from being a great person, he is a very interesting person. Rafael Santandreu.
Gracias, amigos.
Thank you, dear friends. Thank you for being here for a second time, putting up with me. This is already a great achievement. So we're going to continue talking about mental health, education, and ideas that I think can work, that come about from what we do as psychologists, of trying to help people to be stronger, and what consequences that may have when it comes to taking those ideas into the educational context. Perhaps some of the ideas or proposals you will say are not easily applicable, or you need to find the way to apply them, or perhaps they are very applicable. I don't know. I'm not an educator. That's over to you. But what I want to provide are suggestions that from my area of expertise and my work, I believe could be interesting. Remember yesterday we talked about terribilitis and needinitis? There are people who are strong who think that in life there's nothing that terrible. Because if the worst thing that can happen is death, and death is cool, as Albert Casals was saying, death is normal, it's natural, it's like being born. It's like a river cascade, like a waterfall. Why would we see it as something negative? So if the worst thing that can possibly happen to you is to die, and that's actually guaranteed that it's going to happen, then what is terrible? Nothing, really. That a meteorite may fall on the planet and kill us all, well, that's going to happen sooner or later, and that will be the natural thing for it to happen. It will be the good thing, because that's the way things are. These are things we don't understand, the natural order of things, but we should just respect it. We have the intelligence of a fly in comparison to what is the universe and the world. So we need to respect whatever it is that must happen. So if the worst thing that could happen is good, and that's the worst thing, then nothing is that terrible. Everything's okay. Notice how we counteract terribilitis in this way, but we also work so as not to have that many needs and to realize that actually we're very lucky not to need very many things. And this reminds me of a time when we had the previous crisis, when the economic crisis, when I'd already started writing books, and all journalists would ask, Rafael, I, for example, had a book that was called The Glasses of Happiness. And journalists would say, given the present situation, how can you be talking about happiness? Journalists tend to be like that, so catastrophic. And for me, to be honest, I was thinking, well, what do you mean with what's going on? And they were a bit taken aback, and they were like, well, don't you watch the news? Well, there's all this unemployment, and there's all these economic crisis. And I said to them, look, if in Spain, if we have any problems, is that things are going too well. And they would be even more surprised and taken aback. Well, I don't understand. Here, I was emulating a little bit our very dear José María Aznar, the ex-president of Spain, who used to say, España va bien, Spain is going well. And I would say something similar. I would say, Spain is doing too well. Why do I say that? Okay, yes, there's an economic crisis. Yes, but I would say to the journalist, well, how many pairs of shoes do you have? And I would be like, no, count them, really. Flip-flops, sports shoes, dress shoes, count them all. And the journalist would say, I have 8 or 9. And I'd be like, well, how many more do you want? How many more shoes do you need to have before you can say Spain is doing well? You have 8 pairs of shoes. How many did your parents have? They had maybe 2, 3. Your grandparents, 1. How many more things do you want before you can say Spain is doing well? It's just never ending. So this has to do with needinitis. And we have been ingrained with this so much that even living in the first world, mega abundance, we're still like panicking about a crisis. What a disaster. But in the material level, we live in the times for humanity that we've had the most resources, in fact, exaggeratedly so. So people actually start to believe that we have an economic crisis. And I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, we need to stop with growth. Don't worry about economic crisis. So if we go into this needinitis syndrome, then we will see how we need things all over the place. It's just limitless. It just never ends. Now, if we get rid of terribilitis and needinitis, we will reach the conclusion that school is actually not necessary either, nor is education. Albert would agree with me because he's a big fan, as I am, of the Amazon tribes, and there's no schools there, and really, they're doing really well. So school is not necessary, but if we have it, it's cool. It's not bad either. Remember, something that's not necessary does not mean it's bad. It means you can either have it or not. It's okay, either way. But if you have it, okay, cool. So if we start from that premise, kids should not be obliged to go to school. The world of obligations is also something that I think is very important to work on. Because we live in a world where we think we have like all of these obligations, when actually the normal situation to be in is to have no obligations except get your food and get your drink and a place to sleep. I talk a lot, because I've been very much affected by it, for example, Christmas dinner, Christmas lunch at your mum's place, at home. And it's a pain in the ass, really, because you go there and your brother-in-law's there and he's a pain in the ass. And you kind of feel forced to go there. And there's a certain pressure for you to be there. Because if you tell your mum you're not going, well, she's going to be really upset. I think the logical thing to do is to not go. I mean, isn't it crazy? If you don't want to go, if you don't fancy going, if you're not looking forward to it, don't go. But people think, but you're going to upset your mom. Your mom wants to see the whole family reunited. Yes, but if mom has the needinitis of seeing everybody together in order to be happy, then mom is a little bit crazy. She's not right in the head. And so there's a principle of cognitive psychology that it's best not to follow along with other people's madness. Because otherwise you take yourself to very strange places. If you follow with everybody's crazy things, you're going to end up in a really weird place. If you do things just so other people don't suffer, you will end up suffering. So if you don't want to go, don't go to Christmas lunch. There's other alternatives. You could say, look, guys, I'm not going to go to Christmas lunch. I just don't fancy going. But I invite you, anyone who wants to, the next day, we can go for a walk in the mountains. We take some sandwiches. We eat out there. Because I like that kind of stuff. Why don't you come along? And whoever wants to come will come, and whoever doesn't want to come won't come. No problem. Really, no obligation. But let's offer alternatives that are cool. Let's not live in a world of obligations that are strange. And I want to underline this because often when we think of big obligations that we have, but we don't think of the little ones, the daily ones, that are also playing on our minds. I think Albert, who's going to talk with me later this afternoon at 7, I think, at 6, at 5. Yeah. It's at 5 o'clock that we're going to talk together, and you will see how he also lives in a world of no obligations. I'm going to tell you a story about Albert. He's not here yet, so no. He's not here, so don't tell him I told you this story. It's a secret. I met him, Albert, the guy in the wheelchair who came yesterday. He was in my first book, The Art of Not Getting Upset. And so I read a book of his 10 years ago. I think he's now 30 years old, actually. He was 20 back then. And I read his book and was like, wow, this guy is living cognitive psychology. So I tried to get to know him many times, but I wasn't able to because he's always traveling. He doesn't have a mobile phone. So how do you find him? So I wrote to him, I emailed him, but there was no way. So about 2 years ago, I got a call from the psychologist school in Melilla, which is the north of Africa. I was pretty amazed that there would be a school of psychologists there, but first off, I was like, well, I don't really want to go there. They were inviting me to give a conference at a weekend, an event about psychology open to everyone. Has anyone here been to Melilla, this city in the north of Africa? It's ugly, right? It's like really ugly. It's like a crazy place because people are so limited there. I don't know if you know, Melilla is a city that belongs to Spain, and it's on the north tip of Africa. So it's literally just a city with a wall around it that separates it from the rest of Africa, and it's supposed to be part of Spain. So people there are in a really weird situation. And they were saying to me, oh, this person's coming, that person's coming, Albert Casal's coming. And then I went, oh, right. So if Albert Casal's going, I'm going. I want to meet him. So I went there. We spent 2 amazing days there. We got to know each other. And a funny story happened, a secret, okay, which is going to explain what Albert is like. And I'm not sure if that happened to Guillaume as well. It was like this. It was the director of the psychologist school who told me this, the Association of Psychologists. Well, he said, through somebody else, I found Albert, and I said to him, why don't you come to this event? There's this person coming, that person coming. We have a money to pay you with. We'll put you in a good hotel. You can bring someone with you. And he said, well, first of all, money I don't want. I don't manage money. So if you want, you can pay me some tickets. I will accept that for my next destination that I'm going to. I think he wanted to do something in South America at that point. And the director said, okay, we can do that. And Albert said, no, 3 conditions. 1, first of all, don't pay me money. Secondly, I don't want to be in a hotel. Can I be in your home? Can I stay with you? And the director of the association is a really good guy. And he said, well, sure, I'm separated. I've got 2 kids, but you're welcome. Come and stay. And thirdly, Albert said, I want you to know something. Perhaps at the end, I may not go. I may not go after all. And so, of course, the guy was like amazed and said, what? What do you mean? Seriously? And Albert said, yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to be in Africa and I may be having a great time, if that's the case, I'm not coming. So Albert said, what I recommend is that you hire somebody else as well, so that if I don't go, you can have that other person instead. That's as much as I can offer. But the school director, the association director, is also a very intelligent person and understood this is a very valid way to operate, and he wasn't being charged anything. So he said yes to everything, and finally he did attend. Imagine how amazing it is to come across somebody who functions differently to how we all function and how we've been taught to function. What would the world would be like if we didn't have obligations? We often fear that it would be a world that would collapse completely. Well, actually, if everything collapsed, first of all, that would be cool, because really we have too many buildings and too many things and too many everything. So that would be great if everything collapsed, but it's not going to happen anyway. There would be nothing wrong with that. We would just live in a more honest way, a much more calm way, for sure. And the truth is, the world would be a very different place. Something more similar to what we've been discussing here these days. A place where we wouldn't feel obliged to override nature and to extract everything, because there's all these expectations as well that we need to comply with. I need to go to Christmas lunch and all of this stuff. Isn't that beautiful to think of things as how they could be completely different? So, in school, you can't have a place where people are forced to learn. Also, learning doesn't work with obligation. It's a bit like sex. If you are being forced into sex and to having a good time, it just doesn't work. Except for Nacho Vidal, who's a porn star here in Spain. Apart from him, for everybody else, it doesn't work. Learning should be something that is spontaneous, that awakens your interest, not obliged. Winston Churchill was someone very intelligent, and he said that his education ended the day he entered school. That's what he said, and I think he was very right. He was a Nobel Prize for literature. He was a president of the country, prime minister, and he didn't like his education at all. He thought it was really terrible. And I think students should have that freedom. More points on my list. Now I'm going to say something that's a bit of a challenge, and I may not be right, but it's just an idea that I've had for a while, and I'll throw it out at you, and you can let me know whether it's feasible or it's crazy. And I'll tell you a story. I think the work of a teacher, sometimes some teachers don't make the most of the role in all its depth, because being a teacher can be one of the most amazing things, one of the most beautiful jobs, one of the most incredible things to do on the planet, if you accept it as it could be. So the story about this is that I was invited to give a talk at a very high-level school in Madrid, one of those trilingual, really expensive schools. Very posh place. And before that, I had to do like a workshop with the psychologists in the school. There were like 6 or 7. It was a big school. And I needed to do a practical workshop with them to talk about how cognitive psychology operates and how they could perhaps apply it. So I was doing this workshop with all these psychologists, and one of them said, look, a practical case, a problem we have is this. Turns out in this school, we have a student who's really difficult, and he's in the last year. And the tutor of that class is just like overwhelmed. She's super stressed with this student. And this student is actually the son of somebody who's very important, an important politician in Spain. It may have been José María Aznar's son, we don't know. It could have been Zapatero, yes. But anyhow, I have friends, and I'm proud to say, I have friends in all political parties, even Vox. One of my best friends, really, who I love incredibly, has this crazy side about him, and he's from Vox, but I still love him. Anyhow, I go to the school, they tell me this case, and he's the son of somebody really famous and important who's obviously untouchable. So the father's untouchable, so's the son, and he knows it. So the situation is that he does exactly what he wants. He makes the most of the situation, and he has like this little peer group of like 3, 4 kids that are just always messing up, and they're always boycotting everything, knowing that there will be no consequences. And so the teacher is just desperate. What can I do? And so I said, well, tell me a specific example of one of those earthquakes they've caused. Well, for example, recently, this class went on one of those trips, skiing trips, a few days. On the first day, the tutor said to them, okay, we're all going to meet at 8:30 in the morning to get the bus and go all together to the pistes to ski. So everyone was there at 8:30, and this kid and his little group came an hour late. Everybody was there waiting, and this kid arrived with his classic walk going, well, I don't know if I even want to go skiing, what the hell, you know. So the teacher was just hysterical. So my proposal would be, the cognitive psychology proposal, was this. If what has happened there is a wonderful moment for a teacher, for a tutor, there's nothing bad about it, because you have the opportunity to try to transform a human being, which is one of the most beautiful things, one of the most amazing experiences that we can have. So what I suggested is that for this hour that this kid and his friends were arriving, to actually sit everyone on the ground and do a class about renouncing and not having needs and not looking at things in a terrible way, and about love and unconditional love. And to say, kids, do we really need to go skiing every day on this holiday in order to be happy? Is that happiness? I'm not saying that skiing is not good. It's cool. But do I need it to be happy? I can do millions of really cool things. We can be here, we can be playing, we can be learning, we can go walking. There's so many things that we could do. Don't create absurd needs. We can't go because one of our colleagues who's a little bit crazy and does stupid stuff. Well, it's not the end of the world. It's not a nuclear war. We all go a bit crazy sometimes. So it's about unconditional acceptance. So let's make the most of this time to do a debate, to work on cognitive psychology, unconditional acceptance. And when this kid arrives with his little friends, we'd say, dear friend, imagine his name is Luis. Luis, while you were doing whatever, we were here making the most of our time. We've had a great time. We would love for you tomorrow and the next days that we're also going skiing, you come on time, because then we would be able to make the most of the day skiing. But if you can't do it, if you have a difficulty to do it, we're going to love you all the same. Let's go. Let's get the bus and go skiing. With this, what I mean is that educators, and not only the educators, but boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, wives, colleagues, we all need to change each other, influence each other, show each other the capacity to love that we have in order to show the way, but not impose our reality, however good we think our reality is. On the other hand, let's not go crazy because the other one's crazy. We all are crazy sometimes. The concept of unconditional acceptance of everyone else is really important in cognitive psychology. If you want to learn more about this, Gandhi, Satish, was a champion of unconditional acceptance of oneself and everyone else, which is really important. Gandhi, the figure of Gandhi, is very important in cognitive psychology. So, unconditional acceptance of everyone else is really important. We're going to talk about this concept for a moment. I remember also that a few years ago, a book was published that was a self-help book as well, that was very a bestseller. It was called Toxic People. I haven't read it, so I don't know if it's good or bad. I can't say. It's by a psychologist who's also a pastor, Bernardo Samateas, who's Argentinian. I don't know if the book is good or bad, but the title already, I don't know. I really don't like, because toxic people, there are no toxic people in the world. There aren't any. Or if there are, then we all are. We either all are toxic or no one is. Why? Because we all fail. We all make mistakes. Our head does things to us. Human beings are like this. We're imperfect. We fuck up. We make a mess. What would it be otherwise? We'd be really boring. We'd be like perfect computers, like machines, and the world would be so predictable. It would be really difficult to bear. The fact that we're imperfect means that this wonderful activity of transforming others can emerge, which is beautiful, because when you discover the wonderful heart that lies inside every person, wow, that really illuminates you. In another of my books, for example, I spoke of a character that I love, who is a priest, Josep Maria Fenol, who also I interviewed for my latest book. And I found him in one of the programs of Salvados by Jordi Évole, which is a program that I really recommend. It's in YouTube somewhere. It's about prisons. And the leitmotif of the program is prisons as they are, as we understand them nowadays, are they something that is rational, positive, human, or the opposite? Of course, I believe the opposite. So they were interviewing, at a certain point of the program, they were interviewing this priest, who is amazing. He's at the level of Albert Casals. And notice what is different about him. He's an elderly guy. He lives close to Barcelona, and for many years now, he has been living with 6 or 7 of the worst convicts in Spain. And they're not his kids. He has a home where he receives people, and he works in prisons, and when there is a convict who has finished with the years that he needs to do, some of them try to go back home, but they can't go. The people in the village where they've come from or the city won't accept them. They do demonstrations against them and everything. Maybe rapists, people who've done really serious, horrible things. So he receives them in his home. And they live with him for 6 months, a year, sometimes longer, until they find a way to earn a living and set themselves up. Jose Maria is permanently with 6 or 7 of the craziest guys on this country. He's an amazing guy, therefore. He loves his job. He enjoys it hugely. I know him personally, and he's one of the happiest and harmonious people that I've ever seen. And once, in this interview, I asked him, he has unconditional acceptance of everyone else in a huge way. He loves everybody, no matter what they've done, because he believes in the transformation of people. And he has helped loads of huge delinquents to transform, who've opened their minds and who've been able to say, wow, I was really crazy. I was living in a world of aggression because I honestly thought that everyone was a son of a bitch. And if they didn't look like it, they were just pretending, which made them even more dangerous. And now I've realized that no, There's this principle where there's islands of loving people, and life could be something different. And you know what? There's even continents of loving people, and I could belong to that group of people instead of living as I had been living so far. That's what he does. He transforms people to that level. And I asked him a question in that interview. I said, in the psychology that I practice, we also work a lot with an unconditional acceptance of others, but we set a limit. I have a limit in my personal life. For example, I have decided that in my own life, I'm going to unconditionally accept everyone with my family and a good part of my friends. I decided this a few years ago. My family can do whatever they want, they're forgiven. I'm 49 now, for the years I've got left. It won't be that terrible, whatever they're going to do, but I want to do that exercise. They can do whatever they want to me. I will immediately smile, invite them for lunch anyway. This, for me, is a huge unconditional acceptance of people. But I'm not going to do it with everyone. If I meet somebody out there, or I get a friend who's like really, getting on my nerves, then no, that's beyond my quota. I've got my quota of people that I accept unconditionally, but the other people, no. And he said to me, I like that option, Rafael, but I personally prefer to accept everyone. Because you know what? I just wouldn't feel right if I didn't accept everyone unconditionally, like everyone. And I looked at him and I went, you really know. This is another important concept in cognitive psychology. Imagine what an amazing opportunity it is for teachers, because they have the job of Jose Maria, but easier because they're not dealing with super delinquents. They do naughty things, they're a little bit confused. You just need to show them a different way. Now, isn't that cool? You'll have 2, 3, 4 per class, but that is the most interesting work, because you will have to imagine what are the ways that you can transform those kids. By the way, when in psychology you say you want to transform someone, people don't think it's okay. I think that wanting to transform people is actually very normal. For example, when we travel with friends, you're influencing each other. You're influencing each other when you travel together, because you go, one of them says, oh, let's go and see this museum. Oh, you've never been? Oh, let's go. You're influencing them. Another one says, look, it really bothers me that you fart all the time on this trip. You can hold them in or go and do it somewhere else. Well, that's influencing you too, because you're learning something. You need to get to know each other. People can teach each other new things. So influencing each other, if it's for the good and for positive things and to learn things, this is normal and positive. So couples as well should influence and transform each other, but always from a point of not imposing, with love and without the need to do it. Because if it doesn't happen, well, it's okay. You can put up with a few farts. It's fine. You're developing the capacity to be anywhere with anyone. So relax. Learn, enjoy, and love. With this, I will see you again at 5 o'clock with Albert Casals. Get your questions ready and we will answer them in that session. Thank you.
5.